So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the City of LA's Climate Equity Series and the fourth season of our Heat Safety Awareness campaign. Thank you so much for joining the kickoff of our Heat Relief for LA campaign. Chief Segura will have a few announcements to share with you soon. So before we begin, just want to walk you through some of the features that we have today. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A feature in the panel at the bottom of your screen. To access the language interpretation features, please click on the globe on the bottom of your screen and select the preferred language. If listening in Korean or Spanish, please also mute original audio to hear Spanish or Korean audio only. Please feel free to write your questions in the Q&A channel in your preferred language during the event. We will take note of your questions and answer them a little bit later in the session. Please understand that we may not be able to get to all of the questions today. So before we will also be reading the land blessing. We want to acknowledge the original indigenous residents of this land. Los Angeles was founded on unceded land of the Tongva, Chumash, and Tatavian nations, lands without borders. By drawing inspiration from indigenous wisdom and the city's diverse cultures and experiences, we seek to create an equitable decision-making approach to achieving climate and heat-resilient solutions for the present and future residents of Los Angeles, while paying proper respect to this land and its original stewards. We seek to build reciprocity while prioritizing Indigenous and frontline community resilience, and with all Angelenos today and tomorrow to respect the land, water, nature, and air that we share to create a livable, resilient Los Angeles for all humans and our animal relatives and their homes. So now I want to introduce our Chief Heat Officer and the Director of CEMO, Marta Segura.
Thank you, Christine. I really appreciate the introduction. Also, I'll try to go a little bit slower for our interpreters. But before we begin, I do want to acknowledge the current crisis in Los Angeles and the democratic crisis of our nation. The ice raids in LA and across the country are meant to stoke fear, divide families, exhaust us, disempower us, and control our public and private spaces, as well with all disregard for our emotional health and safety and our economy. I stand with our mayor and our governor and U.S. Senator Alex Padilla against the brutality of the ice raids and the illegal deployment of the National Guard and Marines on innocent people and peaceful protests. So LA stands strong with our immigrant community. We can't survive without our immigrant brothers and sisters. And as a city, there is no better time than now to be civically engaged and participate when you can and how you can in peaceful vigils and protests, while also considering donating to organizations like Chirla, Carecen, and all those providing legal aid to save our democracy. LA is strong and even stronger together in times such as these. So please allow a few moments of silence in honor of the families impacted by the violent raids and all who are emotionally impacted by the assaults on our democracy and our humanity. Well, thank you. Thank you for indulging us with your time. And now I welcome you to our Climate Equity LA webinar series and the fourth annual kickoff of our Heat Relief for LA campaign. We are very excited to host two brilliant speakers who are collaborators and allies to CEMO, as well as make announcements about new tools and relevant heat safety information for Angelenos that will help us launch this year's city-led heat campaign. It's crucial now more than ever to be ready for what is expected to be another record-breaking heat season, with even harsher temperatures that impact us all in Los Angeles. Extreme heat is our most lethal climate hazard, and the injuries and deaths due to heat hurt us all, even more than wildfires. When combined with air pollution, smoke, ash, or drought, the risks rise, especially for our lowest income neighborhoods, where there is less tree canopy, less shade, less indoor air filtration, less thermal comfort. And it's why cooling centers and cool spots are so critical for our city. Frankly, it's also why I think we need to have zero fireworks because that's an avoidable risk. So why is heat more of a risk? I want you to be able to convey this to the public too. So please share with your community and families that heat waves are becoming more frequent, of longer duration, breaking record temperatures, thus causing more harm than ever before. We expect the frequency to increase by fivefold over the next few years, although this is becoming less predictable with all the record-breaking heat that we've had. This means we need to up our strategies and our game plan and reshape our city with urban acupuncture, such as passive cooling, cool roofs, greening, tree canopy, shade structures, hydration stations, in order to reduce heat waste, urban heat islands, droughts, heat injuries, both as individuals and as a city, region, and state. So unmitigated heat challenges are mobility, livability, and economy. Angelinos love to be outdoors, but if we are forced to stay indoors, that means less usage of our public transportation system, and it overall hurts the economy and everyone. LA was actually built as an outdoor city. But speaking of indoor and outdoor, we also want to share today some tips for keeping cool, especially if you don't have AC. For example, using blinds, dark curtains, or even sheets over your windows. Ask if your apartment is insulated and weatherized. Turn on fans to circulate air and keep the wind factor on your face and body. Drink cool water, take cold showers. And if you can find cool spots like a library, a community center, a senior center, mall, or a cafe, that'd be great. Also, you can consider visiting friends with AC. Just make sure to get enough cool air every day, about 3 or 4 hours, to stay as healthy as possible. So now that I've given you a few tips and a bit of an overview, I'd like to transition so that we can meet our speakers and our first speaker is Braden Kay, who has uh, lots of experience in extreme heat and community resilience, and is actually the state's extreme heat and community resilience program manager with the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. He also comes to us from the previous position as Sustainability and Resilience Director for the city of Tempe, Arizona, where he developed the city's first climate action plan and built programs in youth climate action, energy equity, local food and resilience to extreme heat. And Braden has a PhD in sustainability from Arizona. So thank you, Braden, for joining us today. And then we also have Erin Coots, the Executive Director of LARC, the LA Regional Climate Collaborative, um, for climate action and sustainability. Erin, as the Executive Director, runs a phenomenal network of local governments, regional agencies, nonprofits, businesses, utilities, and academics, all working on the mitigation of climate and adaptation efforts for climate hazards such as extreme heat in the LA region. Erin convenes lots of local connected leaders to help maximize and share resources. And in fact, we just had a meeting today. So thank you both so much for joining us today. We're excited to hear your announcements and your tools. But Braden, first, I want to say how fortunate we are in California to have an extreme heat and community resilience program and to have you as its program manager within the governor's office. I don't think any other state can say that. And as a state's extreme heat program manager who oversees funding programs and grantees, can you share with us a little bit more about your program, what the goals are, and the grants that you've just awarded?
Hi, Marta. Thank you so much, and it's so good to be here with all of you in space together, and just really also appreciated Marta at the beginning here. All of us at the Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation have Los Angeles, California communities all in our hearts as we see what's been happening over the last few months, and then what's been escalating over the last few days, and including in today.
Thank
So,
you.
in terms of extreme heat and the state's approach, California was really the first state to have a comprehensive heat action plan. It has four main tracks dedicated to both saving lives this summer and the few summers ahead, as well as building, as Marta has talked about, uh, building long-term resilience and understanding that a lot of our landscapes and built environments need decadal-long transformation in both the built environment and with nature-based solutions to protect us for decades to come as it gets hotter and hotter. Um, so we created this grant program to help support the existing work that's happening across the state, and we're funding tribes, community-based organizations, and local jurisdictions, both cities, towns, and counties, to work on extreme heat work. In addition to the Extreme Heat Action Plan, which we help facilitate with the Natural Resources Agency, we run the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Grant Program, and then we also support projects like Cal Heat Score, which you're going to hear in more detail from Erin about some of the work she's doing in that space today. So I think what's really important um, to understand is a lot of today will be about what we can do better with heat and response mechanisms and awareness mechanisms and alert mechanisms, such as Cal Heat Score. And so, and we are supporting that both through the grant program and through the Cal Heat Score program.
Hmm.
But we're also supporting long-term built environment solutions. So our first round of grantees were just officially announced last week, including CEMO, which will be using the funding. Yep, here we go. Here's our first round. So we just announced 47 grantees in 24 counties. It's both infrastructure projects and planning projects. Uh, we're excited to announce one of the exciting planning projects is the City of LA project to do their first heat action plan. Uh, we also are supporting LA County parks to retrofit 3 LA County parks to become more resilient to extreme heat. It's actually an amazing combination of physical infrastructure and social infrastructure. I'll get to that slide in just a second, Rebecca. But you can leave it up. So um, yeah, you can go back to that slide. It's okay. So we are funding a round two, so we're gonna have an announcement coming out. So that'll be really exciting to hear about. There'll be an opportunity for more communities to apply for funding in September. We're gonna be doing some listening sessions next month to help get some feedback on how we're shaping round two of the grant program. And then I really wanted to talk about that the fact that we're doing a very deep investment in LA County for our first round of investment. So you just heard me talking about the LA County Parks program, where we're funding 3 parks in terms of physical infrastructure, shade structures, water, increased tree canopy in 3 LA County parks. But Climate Resolve is also working with LA County to do the social infrastructure element. So they're going to be training residents on how to do Camping 101 classes so that if you had to use a park to overcome a heat wave because you were no longer able to stay in your home due to a lack of cooling or electrification, that you could then use a park and then have the social skills and survival skills to use that park necessarily. So it's a if it was necessary. So it's a great combination of figuring out how you're investing in both social and physical infrastructure at the same time. So we're really excited about that project from LA County Parks. We're also funding LA County Public Health to better prepare for heat-related impacts within the healthcare system. So they'll
Hmm.
be working with hospitals and medical providers on increasing the use of heat data and then making sure that heat data is being used to provide better medical services on during heat waves and during the most intense days. So we're really excited about both of those investments at a county level. You heard me mention funding the first heat action plan at the city level, and then we're also funding some local work. So we're funding the Fremont school greening planning project, and then so that's a planning project for school greening and school cooling, and then we're funding a physical infrastructure project at Hart Elementary to show what investments in green stormwater infrastructure at a school site could look like. And then on the neighborhood level, we're funding. An investment to work on heat awareness in Koreatown, as well as envisioning the next generation of bus shelters in the Florence Firestone neighborhood with the Kinkui Design Initiative. So, what's so exciting about what's happening in LA in terms of our grant program is we're looking at funding interventions at the county scale, city scale, and then at the local scale with schools and
Hmm.
neighborhoods. So it's been so exciting. LA is obviously at the forefront internationally on its approach to extreme heat. And, we're so excited that in this first round of funding, we're able to fund projects at a lot of scales, and really look forward to seeing the kind of impact that we can have with some of this exciting initial planning, as well as some of these early demonstration projects.
Great. Again, I want to say how fortunate we are in LA to have your program and have the governor's office support that. It's really rare if you look across the country, this kind of innovation and program investment does not exist. But we really want to be able to share the tools that we develop and the resources that we develop, not just across cities in California, but hopefully with the rest of the nation. So this could have, that domino effect, I think. And that's one thing I've heard from you, Braden. It's like you really want the work that we're creating in LA to have that domino effect and help other cities and support their work. And for people to really understand, that heat has been a silent killer, but we really need to step it up, and it's been hard. But Braden has been a warrior for extreme heat for some time, and as a lot of us here have been, to get these kinds of resources activated to ensure that cities are ready. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron because Braden brought up Cal Heat Score, we brought up the use of tools. And Aaron, you have so many resources and tools, but I know that you have a new one to share with us, so it's all yours.
Thanks, Martha. And thanks for the invitation to join you today.
Of course.
You're right. There is so much work happening in California and in Los Angeles. Our meeting this morning had 65 participants from across LA County who came to share their climate projects that they're working on. We know of dozens of extreme heat projects that are communications projects, implementation projects, planning projects. There's also new research coming out of UCLA and USC. So it's a really exciting time to be working on extreme heat in Los Angeles. Want to start off by talking about our Heat Education Ambassador and Training Program. This has funding from the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. Through this project, we have partnered with the Fernandina Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, Rising Communities, and LA County's Department of Public Health. And additionally, a dozen community organizations who are working with the County Department of Public Health to do door-to-door outreach through these community public health teams. And so they are, with some resources and some training from this project, they'll be able to go door to door and encourage heat awareness, share resources, share easy ways for folks to stay safe on hot days. So a huge shout out to the community organizations that we're working with. In LA City, we're working with Esperanza Community Housing, Providence Health, the Wellness Center, Visión y Compromiso, and CORE Community Organized Relief Effort, AltaMed as well, up in the Antelope Valley Partners for Health. And I think I've missed one or two there. But there, as I've said, there's so many organizations working on heat. And one of the things that we've been able to do over the past couple of years is to do a public information campaign. So LARC has just launched our 4th annual public information campaign to raise awareness about the risks of extreme heat and share strategies to stay safe in the heat. We, in partnership with LA County Department of Public Health, have 19 social media posts with heat protective strategies, and each of those is tied to a blog post with additional resources. So the content that you see here and the other posts have been created with input from many of the participants that I see here today, folks from Climate Resolve, from Black Women for Wellness, the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, and perhaps some others I've missed. So thank you for your guidance on what tips and resources are most relevant. And thank you to the 115 distribution partners who have signed up to share this content and amplify it. If you're interested in sharing content with your networks, you can sign up to get weekly emails from us with new social media resources to share with your network. I'll note that this content all directs folks to county-wide resources. And so if you're interested and you're working in the city of Los Angeles, on the next slide, you'll see that Martha's team has been working on a Heat Relief for LA campaign for about the same amount of time. So LARC and CEMO have very similar social media campaigns, but if you're in the city of LA, CEMO's stuff is going to direct you to city resources. And if you're outside of the city of LA, we have county-wide resources. So it might be a better fit depending on who your audience is. We
Great.
are also partnering with CEMO to run ads on buses and bus shelters. If you see them out in the wild, please snap a picture and share them on social media with hashtag HeatSafeLA and Heat Relief for LA. Or we welcome an email if you're not on social media. But we'd love to know if you're seeing them out on the
Great.
streets of LA. And I think I'll leave it for there. I might let Braden talk a little bit more about Cal Heat Score before I jump in to more about Cal Heat Score, if that's all right.
Sure, of course. That's a good cue for you, Braden.
Perfect. So Cal Heat Score, so really appreciate what Marta said. A lot of what is being offered in terms of these new programs are first in the country. So we have a first in the country grant program, and we have a first in the country heat warning system. So Cal Heat Score is a new tool to show heat risk at a zip code level. And it's the first of its kind. It's being run out of Cal EPA by the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. It just came online in January and then was officially announced last week. We, as LCI, are partnered in along with the California Department of Health, the Department of Insurance, Cal OES. All are working with Cali, PA, to make sure that the score is used throughout California and that we're really taking input from communities, from community-based organizations, from individuals on how to make the score better. And the exciting thing about the score is, yes, it's a score, and you can go look up for your zip code what your score is for up to 7 days out. But it's also a repository for heat information. So they're hoping to store information about cooling centers. They're hoping to work with individual regions to decide what type of locally relevant information you want to have on the heat score website for your area. Um, the idea is eventually it'll be an app, eventually it'll be tied to potentially text notifications. This is a very early stages in the use of the score, and so we're really doing early stage listening. Because of our need to do early stage listening and do trainings on how people use the score, LCI went into contract with LARC and UCLA Luskin to help us do some deeper listening on how we might use the score and how the score will help protect very specific populations. And so I'll let Aaron talk a little bit more about these cohorts that LARC is running to really understand how people may use the score and to help inform how we're training people on how to use the score. Is that helpful, Aaron?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you for teeing it up and explaining what the state has created, because we definitely can't take credit for creating the tool. So what our work and with our partners at the Luskin Center for Innovation, the folks at Luskin are researching best practices for heat warning systems and helping to identify ways that the tool can be more effective. LARC's portion of this work is to work on a set of outreach materials, engagement projects, around Cal Heat Score. So including webinars, focus groups, these cohorts, and instructional videos. So together, these two UCLA teams will be producing a user guide and a training manual this winter. So highlighting those focus groups that Braden mentioned, we are seeking input from community members who can speak to the experiences of outdoor and warehouse workers, older adults, and California Native tribes. The goal is to create a space for community experts to share ideas on how CalHeat Score can both help raise awareness about the risks of extreme heat, and how we can improve the tool in the future, and represent the on-the-ground experiences of folks from these three groups. So what we have here on the slide is July 16th, we've got our first cohort info session. We'll be hosting them in English and in Spanish, so encourage folks to sign up and join us to learn more about this series of meetings that we're hosting this summer.
Fantastic. So we're sort of on this topic of tools and resources that we have. I think, Braden, thank you already for announcing that we the grant from the governor's office for creating our first heat action and resilience plan. So we're hoping that in August we can launch that and start meeting with our community advisory board, our community co-applicants and our community supporters to do lots of great community engagement through that process, because it's really, we talk about this a lot, and we actually have research demonstrating that communities are still not understanding how much higher the risk is from extreme heat. So we really have to find different ways of getting that information out there. So even though it might seem, oh, well, LA County is doing work and the city of LA is doing work and the nonprofits are doing work, even with all of that work and with all of our materials and our PSA campaigns, it's still been a challenge to have communities first accept the dangers and risks of extreme heat and that's higher than wildfires, and second, to take action on it. So maybe, Erin, it's a good time to kind of talk about what we were discussing earlier about behavior change and how you found that to be one of the most difficult things to overcome in communities.
Absolutely. I think that our behaviors and our habits and our everyday activities are just really sticky. It's hard to change where we travel for work, where we travel to get our kids to school. And so there's some new research from UCLA researchers, Travis Longcore and Kelly Turner, and some others, who have looked at anonymized cell phone data to see where people go on hot days, and behavior doesn't travel patterns don't seem to change very much. You still got to show up for work, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so what we aren't seeing in that type of study is whether people are bringing a water bottle, whether they're bringing an umbrella with them, whether they've remembered to cover themselves with sunscreen, right? All of these sort of very individualized health protective strategies are things that folks do have control over, and prioritizing that I think is super important.
Yeah. Exactly. And just to bring up the subject of workers for a second here, we have a lot of outdoor workers in Los Angeles, including landscapers and construction workers. And, after work, because they're young, they go get a beer, and before work, they drink coffee. And both of those dehydrate your body. So if you're starting off with a dehydrated body at the beginning of the day, and you're not aware that that's what you're doing, your risks increase so much more. So I just want to get it out there that the solutions might sound simple, but overcoming old habits and routines is not, just like with anything else. And that's what we need in order to succeed and reduce heat injury and reduce heat mortality. And we can't stress enough how important it is to have the public's cooperation to help your families and communities understand the risks of these record-breaking heats in California and in Los Angeles. So that's our challenge that we need to overcome, right? How do we change those behaviors with all of this phenomenal investment and information that and even if we reshape the city and we install decarbonized buildings and have bus shelters, we still need the public to do their part. And that's what we're hoping to be able to contribute to over time, right? So next, I'd actually like to discuss a little bit more about the heat story map. I didn't say that in the beginning, but LA created a heat story map with USC. And if you really want to understand the context, the geography, the statistics, the demographics, uh, what vulnerabilities we have, what kinds of solutions we're offering, why we're doing what we're doing. I really recommend that you go to our heat story map. And we'd be happy to walk you through it. We'd be happy to present it to your groups. Same thing with our Cool Spots LA app. It has hydration stations. And in fact, we have hydration stations at every library now, every rec and park facility. We even have them in uh, where the home Skid Row, right? In Skid Row, we have climate stations in Skid Row. So we have shade structures, we have bus shelters. So everything and anything that we could identify and get data for within the city, we have included it in our cool spots. And in another workshop, we'll go over the difference between a cooling center, a cool spot, an augmented cooling center. That's really another whole level of discussion, but just to acknowledge there are so many different terms we're using within the city that we may be comfortable with, but we haven't really conveyed them in a structured way to the community. But I like the term cool spots because it could mean anything and any resource in the city, whether it's regulated or not, that helps you cool off. So kind of just wanted to do a shout out there for those resources. And sort of not breaking news, but we're trying to get something similar to Cool Spots LA app for the Olympics. For all the tourists that are going to come in, for all the community members that are going to come in, for them to know and understand where they can cool off in the city. And I hope we can expand the resources that we have between now and then to ensure that we have the facilities to prevent injuries during the Olympics and other big games. Great. All right. So
Can I
are
tie it in the cool spots
yes,
with the Cal Heat
yes,
Score tool? One of the
yeah.
interesting things about the Cal Heat Score tool is that it does include cooling center data, and it's pulling that data in from the local governments, from each of those
Mhm.
local cities. So keeping that data that you have updated is really important, because it then feeds into this statewide tool.
Great. Yes, it's critically important for all cities to begin to collect even the places that they don't maybe necessarily embrace as cooling centers yet. Like for example, in LA, we knew our libraries were places that we advertised in some maps to cool off, but we never conveyed it directly to the public. We didn't say your libraries are cooling centers, your senior centers are cooling centers. So now they're beginning to understand this, but it's still, our research shows from taking down the heat, also done with UCLA graduate students, really wonderful research project. They went into marginalized communities that spoke different languages, and they're like, we never thought to go to our library to cool off. And on the inverse of that, we used to offer cooling centers without regard to disparities or heat risk in the city of LA. But since this position became a reality, we've advised the city to open those cooling centers, if there's a shortage of cooling centers, in areas with higher vulnerabilities and higher risks. Because before, very few people were going to cooling centers. Now that we've moved them to areas that tend not to have air conditioning, tend not to have other resources or tree canopy or shade structures, in some cases, the participation in those cooling centers has increased by 1,000%, in other cases by 300%, but the numbers have definitely shot up. And part of it is due thanks to Rec and Parks and EMD for having outreach programs and letting people know that their community centers or rec centers, libraries are now being offered as cooling centers. So we're really excited about that information. That's still informal data, but we'd like to pull it together so that it becomes formalized data so we can use that information to inspire other cities, right, across the region and across, because the research before we did that was people don't like going to the city's facilities. And in this case, it's not that they like it, but that they have to, that they need to. And we found that people actually use those resources when they don't have other options, right? So kind of an important thing to put out there about cooling centers. And I also want to share with everybody that we have a pilot happening right now with our LA Public Libraries, where we've opened 5 libraries on Sundays during heat alerts, because normally these libraries aren't open on Sundays. All of our regional libraries are open on Sundays, but our smaller libraries in the communities with the greatest risks are typically not open on Sundays. What we need, though, is funding for capacity and staffing to keep all of them open on Sundays during heat alerts. So that's a challenge, a budgetary challenge we have yet to overcome, but it's something to look forward to and something to plan for, and something to collect data on so that, again, we can encourage not just the city of LA, but other cities to do the same, right? And I do want to give a shout out to LA Public Libraries and their general manager, John Zabo, because he is phenomenal. In every crisis, our libraries are there, and he just finds a way to be even more resourceful than before. And our librarians are multilingual. Like in Chinatown, they speak different forms of Chinese. In Koreatown, they speak Korean, and they're just made to serve communities. So we're really fortunate in Los Angeles to have that resource. Great. So maybe now we can turn to Q&A. Rebecca, Christine, can we turn to Q&A? And in the meantime, if there's anything else y'all would like to comment on, please feel free to bring it up. I'm really excited about Cal Heat Score, and the visual aspect of it, right? Because I don't think we talked a lot about that right now. There's different colors and different levels. And I think the origins of creating Cal Heat Score were to ensure that there was a way, a visual way to convey to the public what the level of risk was during a heat event. And so I know that information is going to be shared, Erin, in your with your community health educators and in your sessions. But I wanted to point out to the community, check out that website for Cal Heat Score and really give us input on whether the visuals that we're providing as a state are going to be able to convey the level of risk so that you could start preparing and planning ahead. Right. I think the staff is still getting the questions out. Christine, you're muted.
Apologies. So we did have a few questions that we received before this presentation that we wanted to answer, along with some of the questions that folks have been asking throughout this presentation. So one of the first questions is, how do heat awareness campaigns actually help the community around us? And what available resources are out there for the public besides the ones mentioned just now?
I'll start with Braden, because even though he's the state's extreme heat program manager, he really started with community level programming.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, you all live in a space that has incredible communications in terms of what LARC has produced and what CEMO has produced. There's also, from the state perspective, you also have information for Heat Ready California. So for those of you that haven't seen Heat Ready CA, that has a bunch of resources, as does the California Department of Public Health website and Cal OES. So those are all resources in terms of heat relief that you can go to additionally. So those are excellent ones to use as well, but I recommend just starting locally with the ones that the city and LARC are providing.
Great. And I think a good segue is to talk about community health educator programs, and why we are using that model in Los Angeles. And Erin, maybe we'll start with you, and then I can say why we chose that for our heat work as well.
No, absolutely. It comes from hearing from community organizations that have community health workers. They're saying that they recognize that this is a need for their folks who are going door to door. A couple summers ago, and they were saying what resources are out there for us to train our community health workers. So it seemed like a need that we could fill. And so we're putting together a series of trainings. The first being on our changing climate, and how we're experiencing more volatile weather. And so background on climate change, and then staying safe as somebody who's working outdoors. So as somebody who is going door to door and being exposed. So personal health safety. And then how do you communicate about heat in when you're talking to folks face to face at events, or when doing lemonade stands, is what we've heard from some of the community health workers that they've been doing. Rather than knocking on doors, they've been setting up a table on the corner to have folks come to them. So what are the conversations that you can have about heat in those settings? So that's our trainings in a nutshell. Those are going to be up on LARC's website before the end of the month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's great to me is that the state, the city, the county have all recognized the value of peer-to-peer education and this concept of trusted partner networks, and not trying to be so top down, but you, Erin and Braden, show the trust in community and the faith in communities, and the concept that yes, that's where the communication has to be disseminated from, in their language, in their culture, in their places of worship, at school, at work, etc. Those are all valuable places to hit, because these peers are in all of those different types of spaces. And so it's definitely idea which has come of age. I've known about it for at least 20 years. And I think the other benefit too is that it's kind of a workforce development effort, because when you train and you prepare individuals from the community on community health education practices, you're giving them a whole new skill, and one that's purposeful and meaningful. And they are so excited and so engaged and involved that it is really one of our most effective ways to ensure that this information gets out there. So it's kind of a win-win tool for all of us. And last year we had Visión y Compromiso and other promotoras do door to door, and that takes a lot of courage. I mean, I've done door to door for campaigns before, and it just takes so much courage to get out there and knock on doors. Not to mention if you're doing it in the hot sun or in other types of inclement weather, right? These people's hearts are really into it. But we also, we talked a little bit earlier about how difficult climate communications is, and risk and public health communications are. And it's these experts in the community that help us put these technical words into phrases that make sense and make meaning to the people in the community. So I really love that question, but it's something that we're definitely trying to overcome, in terms of how we communicate even better, with these vulnerable communities, these marginalized communities. So we're going to keep at it, and hopefully more research will come out on this as well, because I love the fact that we're doing all this in Los Angeles, but we want to test it 3-5 years down the road, by collecting data now, so that we can see how these communities are responding to the information that they're receiving. I can give you an anecdote though. When I first started in this role as chief heat officer, and I was talking to nonprofit organizations about the importance of extreme heat, it was not an accepted priority for those nonprofit organizations that already worked in the climate space, right? But then when we started to inform them about the risks of extreme heat, how it was impacting their communities, how it was so intersectional with other compounding climate hazards and air pollution, and the vulnerabilities that their low-income neighborhoods that they represent felt, and how that UCLA heat risk map, in fact, showed them that the injuries were greater in their communities, everything switched, everything flipped. They realized that, yes, this is definitely the climate hazard that is most a priority for their organizations. And so that has also resulted in a transformation in how they have shaped their programming and shaped their educational materials. So it is possible, right? If you have these trusted partner networks and leaders in these communities who actually have been advocating for resources, so that they can protect their communities for decades, right? I think we're ready for the next question, Christine.
Yes, the next question. Are there any grant programs for cities, counties, or nonprofits can also apply?
I'll put it to Erin and then maybe to Braden, because you're Erin has local information on grants, right?
Yeah, we do a monthly grants newsletter. And they always go out at the end of the month. So we've got one for May, and I'm trying to remember whether I did just see an urban greening one.
Oh,
It's
with
it's
Metro.
LA Metro. It's LA Metro's urban greening program is coming out. The grant guidelines are still in development, which is really nice if you're thinking about applying for a grant to know about it in advance and that you don't just have 30 days from when the grant deadlines drop to when you have to submit it. Um, so if you are interested in more information about that, um, Rebecca will share Lark's email, and we are glad to include that, or we will definitely have it in our next newsletter.
Hmm.
I'm
And then I
looking.
think, yeah, and before I tip it to Braden, I will say, I think a great way to become sort of a recipient of grants is you don't necessarily have to apply, but if you're in communication with folks like myself or Erin or other leaders in the city and the county, and you really feel like your organization can do this work and wants to do this work, let us know. And perhaps in the next grant that we develop, we can include you as part of that grant proposal so that we can compensate you for the work that you want to do around this area. And that's how it's worked before, right? We build relationships in the community. We understand who those trusted partner networks are, and then we include them in our grants so that they can get compensated for the work, and not just do it for free, right? Braden.
Yeah, what a great point, Marta. And just in terms of the state programs, in November, California voters passed Prop 4, the climate bond, which is a $10 billion investment in climate action and climate resilience. That included $50 million for our grant program. So we will be going out with about a $22 million round that its RFP will come out in September. So there'll be an opportunity there, and eligible applicants include academic institutions, cities, towns, counties, community-based organizations. In our first 47 grantees, over 40% of them are CBOs, and then about of the remaining, another more than half of those have CBOs as partners on those grants. So, to Marta's
Awesome.
point, you may not be the lead applicant, but there's an opportunity to join a coalition. And a lot of
Hmm.
these, our grant is certainly looking for collaborative partnerships to apply for the program. In addition to
Hmm.
our program, the bond is going to be funding the Community Resilience Center program for additional money, the Transformative Climate Communities program, both out of the Strategic Growth Council, and then a lot of the CNRA natural resources programs, such as the Urban Greening Program, have Prop 4 money as well. So there is going to be quite a bit of money, especially for nature-based solutions when it comes to
Hmm.
extreme heat. In the coming next several years because of Prop 4. And so we'll make sure that the CMO office is aware of all of those and then passing them on, because it's going to be important to see applications from across Los Angeles, from the city, from the county, and from community-based organizations. And it's going to be really important to have coalitions as part of those applications wherever possible.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much for that, Braden. That's really exciting. Good news for California and for all of us. Christine, next question, please.
So we mentioned cool spots, but the question asks, what other cool spots can the city recommend to the public? This particular person only has one public library and one adult enrichment or senior center in their area.
That's a really great question. So LA is, whether it's LA County or the city of LA, there is a LA County map with cool spots, and then there's a city map with cool spots. But we're really trying to expand that, particularly with the oncoming games, and collaborate with local restaurants, local cafes, museums, uh, other community centers that aren't typically serving as cooling centers. But it's going to be important to be in touch with your council member and your either your supervisor, or your city offices to try to identify more spaces and create more spaces in local communities, right? And we also want to, in Los Angeles, we haven't done this quite yet, but our city buses are all air conditioned. So they can both serve as a transportation to a cooling spot or a cooling center, and or just get on the bus if you really need to cool off because they have AC inside those buses. So mobile sources of cooling are going to be critical to cities, and I think to Los Angeles, and that's an area we need to push harder on for the city of LA as we move forward, especially since some of those buses are going to be clean energy, renewable bus systems that provide zero emissions, right? Erin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, because I don't work for a city, I get to say things like, go to the cool place near you, go to your barbershop, go to your movie theater, go to the grocery store at peak temperatures of the days. So it does not need to be just a city-run facility. It's your friend's house who has air conditioning, right? Um, and if you are in a place where you can invest in cooling of a single room to do either like a single um, heat pump HVAC device that just does sort of like a window unit. They make these now. Um, these you can do a single room, and having a cool spot that you can cool down at night is really important. So just wanted to reiterate that piece again of cooling your body down while you sleep is really important. So
Yeah,
having a single room at home is the way to go before you're thinking about doing the entire building.
yeah. And I think both LA Department of Water and Power and SoCal Edison have programs, but I'll pitch LADWP since I'm the city of LA. They have a Cool LA program. They have air conditioner rebates. And right now, the city is providing air purifiers as well to nonprofit organizations to distribute to their constituents. So get a hold of us after this webinar if you want your nonprofit organization to receive air purifiers. But you'll go to DWP for the air conditioners and the air conditioner rebates. And they've done giveaways for air conditioners as well. And like Erin said, you don't have to have it on the whole day, but recovering from an extreme heat event takes about 3 or 4 hours, and your body does need to recuperate. So take that into considerations, because we have heard that people with air conditioners don't turn them on for fear of not being able to pay the bill. But you don't have to have it on all day, and you don't have to have it full blast either. And I was just reading recently that every degree of temperature that you don't use, like let's say you want to put it at 65 because that feels really great. But if you keep it at 71, that's actually a healthy temperature, and you'll pay a lot less for your energy bill if you keep it at 71. So think about survival versus just extreme thermal comfort so that your energy bill is reduced. But I definitely recommend going to the Cool LA website for LADWP and similar websites for whatever utilities serve you, and finding out what financial resources they have, what plans they have, what rebates they have, what incentives they have, and also speaking to your city so that they can get you some air purifiers, because heat season unfortunately also comes along with fire season sometimes, and we're crossing our fingers that we don't have any more fires. But even if we don't, if you have air pollution in your area, smog in your area, air purifiers are really helpful. And they're also great for people with vulnerabilities, who have asthma, etc. And we had a whole indoor air pollution webinar, and I'm not going to go into depth there, but basically you need to keep your unit as clean as possible so that the dusts and the emissions from rugs or carpets and other things aren't actually what's agitating your vulnerabilities and your pre-existing conditions. So thanks for that question.
Great. I think unfortunately, due to our time, it seems like that was our last question. So I think we could start with our conclusion now.
Okay. All right. Well, I did want to mention a little bit about passive cooling because there was one passive cooling question. It's LA is already developing some standards through our Department of City Planning, Department of Building and Safety, and LADWP are incentivizing it with cool roofs, and other passive cooling measures and weatherization measures in your buildings, in your homes, in your apartments, etc. So I wanted to mention that because not everybody can afford to have an AC all the time. So in the future, passive cooling is going to be a way to reduce the energy burden. And we definitely want to continue to incentivize that at the city and hopefully at the county level. And for smaller cities, it's going to be really important to consider. And I don't know if either of you wanted to mention those technologies of cool roofs and cool surfaces and cool technologies. Great. All right. So I think Christina's right. We're almost at the end. And I think what I wanted to do at the end is like, what is your call to action? What do you recommend for the individuals listening to us now who are probably mostly like nonprofit leaders, government staff and government leaders that want to know what to tell their communities so that they could stay safe this summer? Is there a call to action that you want to share? Either, I guess we'll start with Erin, since you're the local person.
Sure. Join our heat campaign. Share materials. We've made it super easy for you. We know that your staff time is at a premium, and so we try to make it super easy for folks to share resources with your community. We will drop that in the chat one more time.
Great. All right, Braden, your turn.
Yeah, stay connected. I think one of the things that's been so exciting is watching the really amazing campaigns that different CBOs are doing across the state. A lot of them are up on the Office of Community Partnership and Strategic Communications websites, but you can just do it within your own organizations in LA. There's just so much powerful work that's happening, and a lot can happen by just talking to your neighbors, talking to other CBOs that are down the street from you.
Mm-hmm.
Hear what type of techniques they're using to reach different vulnerable populations, and that's gonna be a key component, as well as using resources like the ones from CEMO and LARC, are going to be really critical to making sure we all stay safe.
Great. What comes to mind for me is it would be great if everybody here could identify one person in their circle or a family in their circle of influence that doesn't have air conditioning and share some of the tips that we've shared today, like having blinds, having fans, going to cool spots, the ones that Erin mentioned and the cool spots that I mentioned, and just to imprint upon them that it's important to have this shift and behavior change to protect their health, right? And I definitely want them to go to our heat relief resources at climateforla.org. I'd love them to sign up for our campaign as well, and we will direct them and defer them to Erin's campaign, Heat Safe. And in fact, Erin, I'm breaking news. I was talking to my staff that I want to change our slogan to Heat Safe. That way, it's all about heat safety, heat, right? In the future, we'll go for that in the future. But basically, that's how strong we collaborate in LA. And anyway, just find one family or one community whose behavior needs to change so that they can protect themselves this summer, and count on us in your local community as resources. And we will definitely be connecting you with the state's resources in the future through our newsletter, through our webinars, through our communications. And my final announcement is that CEMO is going to be moving to the Emergency Management Department from the City of LA. But that's really great news, and we're really looking forward to it. So maybe the next time we have one of these webinars, we will be here with the Emergency Management Department folks. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Braden. Thanks, Erin, for the phenomenal tips and resources and information. I hope everybody stays safe and feels a little bit safer having heard this amazing information today. Thank you all. And thanks for the team that helped pull this together, Rebecca, Christine, Amy, and Gordon, all on my team, who I really appreciate.